Dear young African comms professional, your future self has something to say. All right, welcome to another episode of To My Younger Self. This podcast series is brought to you in collaboration with the Comms Mentorship Circle and, of course, documented here on the PR Visions podcast. This is a series where we sit to discuss with seasoned communicators and industry leaders. We want to uncover the lessons that they would share with their younger selves. Today, I'm honored to introduce a guest whose career and impact speaks volumes. Her name is Joyce Sackitey, fondly known as Joy. She's a seasoned communications professional and freelance consultant with a wealth of experience spanning public relations, corporate communication, government, media, and community engagement. She is the current president of Women in PR Ghana. And as a current president, Joy has been a force in empowering and mentoring women in the communications industry. She's also charting new paths using her voice to promote agribusiness and leisure through Neville Farms in Ghana, while advocating for rest, relaxation, and reconnection with nature amongst corporate professionals. Beyond her professional pursuits, Joy is passionate about environmental preservation, women empowerment, and literacy. She's leading initiatives like Girls Go Getters, a community that inspires women to read, to lead, and to pursue their boldest goals. In this conversation, she'll open up about her journey, her pivots, and the wisdom that she wishes she had known earlier. So, lean in. This session is one that you do not want to miss. Hi, Joy. I'm happy to have you here.
Yes, I'm also happy. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So I met Joy in Ghana. When was that now? Last month,
July.
actually. Yes.
Yes.
And I met her, and first of all, I could have been thrown back by her energy because that energy is for only Nigerians, That energy is reserved for Nigerians. And then
you see,
there's this lady that's like, I'm like, okay, this is not the Ghana style thing, but okay, I was taking it all in, and come to find out she's actually part Nigerian, so I get
it. You get it.
Yes, I do. It's great to be here having this conversation with you, and I look forward to everything that we will unpack as a result of this conversation. So my first usual question is, how did you get into communications?
Okay, so I've told the story several times, and by the way, thank you so much, Blessing and PR Fusion, for having me. So for me, it was just a chance. I was in the Ghana Institute of Journalism. I had always wanted to be a journalist because I've watched TV and I'll see how the newscasters would just, they would speak, and I loved it, and I love to read. And in fact, I didn't even know that there was more to journalism. So I just thought it was just about reading the news. So I'd always wanted to go to GIJ. Everybody knew that I was going to be a journalist. Then I got to journalism school. And then when I got there, a teacher, or let's say a lecturer, then discovered and said, have you heard about PR? And I said, no. And he says, your enthusiasm, your personality suits a PR person. So you want to read more. So I then went reading about PR. I'm like, yeah, that's true. That sounds more like fun and who I am. So I came back and said, I think I like that. Can I change my course? And then he said, no. He said, you know what? I think you should go ahead with the journalism course, because at a point from level 100 to level 200, all the students will be in one classroom. By the way, we learn all the foundationals. And then it was in level 300 and 400 that we get to choose a major in either journalism or PR. So he says, go ahead with the journalism, because you'll be working a lot with journalists and you will get to understand how they think. So when you become a communications or PR person, you are better informed to know what to do. That was wisdom. and I took that upon. So from then on, I began to read more on PR communications, knowing that that is where I would want to go. So I really chanced upon it. And really, I came out and I haven't regretted. I think if anyone had asked me, what will you be if you were not a PR or comms person? I'll always say, I'll go back and I'll be a PR and comms person as you just. So this is how my journey started from school.
Awesome. I like to hear that. And I'm even glad that you had someone to show you the path to walk in, because that's another thing a lot of us don't have. I mean, a lot of us just have just know that the ideal is to go to school, get an education, and then figure out your life from there. But knowing that you had this lecturer that at least put it in your mind and just told you either way, you still have to work with journalists. That's really good. I think I say that you're blessed. So yeah, I love it for you. Yes, thank you. Okay, so if you could tell yourself, your younger self, one thing, you said it would be about fear and action. So let's talk about the paralysis that comes with fear, and then how can we use it as fuel instead?
Okay. So I believe that, and maybe now because of social media and also what influencers are doing in terms of the messaging that they are sending out, they talk a lot about fear. But then if we cast our minds back to 15 years ago or 12 years ago when I was in school, not 12 years ago when I started my career, we didn't have a lot of people to tell us that when you are afraid, that is even when you should pursue it, because it meant that it was outside of your comfort zone. So coming up, you really didn't want to be afraid of anything because you thought that fear meant failure, in that when you are afraid of something, you are likely to fail. And when you fail, it's hard for you to come back, or you have destroyed a certain reputation, and maybe the new people would not assimilate with that, or would not understand what this is, because now we have a lot of information at our fingertips, and you can get me to speak to you about my journey. In our time, blessing, you didn't have that readily available because we
Sure.
didn't have the channels that we have now.
Yeah.
So there were so many things, blessing, that I would have done differently, which is I would have taken more action towards it. I remember that I was very fascinated with government engagement. I was fascinated by it because I thought if a company had a very good idea, right, and it sits in very well with the government's agenda, it should be very easy for the government to say yes to whatever the industry wanted to do, right? But because I didn't study that in terms of engagement and engaging, how to understand how government works and all that, I never pursued it. And looking back now, it's something I would have loved to pursue. Who knows? I may have been in government by now, or be part of a system that supports what the government is doing directly. But I was so afraid to go into it that I just stuck into what I knew, which was really being in the corporate private setting. So that is what I meant by being, if I have any advice to give my younger self or to anyone who is listening to me today, will be that when you are afraid of something, go do it. And that failure is part of the journey. And maybe now people turn it and say, even the word failure shouldn't be it, but it is what it is. When you fail at something, it just means that you haven't done it before. You don't have all the expertise or the skills or the talent that is needed. And guess what? You only get, or the best way you can get that talent, those skills, and those competences is when you have put your skin in the game and you are doing it, and over time you get better. So that is really the issue with fear for me.
So I actually very much agree with you, because I could say that I also used to be someone that was quite fearful. and didn't like to take risks. And because I didn't like to take risks, I was afraid because I was very afraid of failing. And even when I think I was able to just come to terms with the fact that failure is part of life, there was also the worry about my reputation. So, what would people say? And you come to realize that eventually people are not even looking at you. They're
No.
not they're not looking at you because they're like, okay, I want to see you fail.
Yeah.
But sometimes the little steps that you even take are so magnified that people say, wow, you did that. If you could do it, I
Exactly.
can do it as well. And then
Yes.
you just feel like, okay, am I sure? And then suddenly you start to feel like an imposter.
Yeah.
Yeah, the entirety of it. So I can completely relate to that. Thank you for sharing it.
You're
So let's
welcome.
talk about your consistent actions that have been taken. So you mentioned that the future is a sum of consistent actions taken today. And I can understand the place of consistent actions because, like they say, little drops of water can actually make an ocean. They just need to keep dropping and dropping for as long as is needed, and then you see that eventually you have a big body of water. So can you share one small action that you took years ago that has paid off massively in your career right now?
All right. Okay. I want to share like three so that at least whoever is listening to this can find either way. So one is reading. One of the actions I really, really enjoyed as a child and still going at it is reading. And reading had opened so many doors for me and also had made me, it has shaped my mindset. And if I had a personality that was even lovely, I think that reading had magnified it, right?
Right.
Then the second one will be championing and cheerleading people, especially women. So this is an action I remember way back, even in senior high school. I was very much engaged or liked women who seem to know where they're going. And I look back and I think that sometime back I looked back in my album and I realized that I was always almost forming like a girls group that wasn't doing anything bad, but we were known for either we were the best, like the best of the best is in that group, or all the perfects are in that group. And
Mm.
I happen to be like the lead, right? Like I form it. So I realized that it's been consistent. And today it's where this is where it has brought me, right?
Right.
So that's cheerleading. So I spoke about reading, cheerleading. Then the next one is that I have always been curious. So, and I would use an example that happened yesterday. So I was that lady who would be walking, and when I'm walking, I am looking at signposts, especially within my community. And when I see, so when a new company comes into my vicinity, I know it because I'm consistently looking at the signpost, and I realize that a new signpost had added up. And when I see the signpost, I will walk and look for where the signpost is leading me, where the office is, and I'll find it. And I was with a cousin. She always used to say, "But why do you do that? That's so very weird." And I like to walk a lot. I used to walk like I just randomly will walk, maybe in the morning, walk in the afternoon, walk. If I feel like I need energy, I'll walk. And I always told her that I feel like I will be walking and somebody will need to know that place. They needed a direction to that place. And because I'm walking, I will be the one to show them the way. And
That's so noble.
and I realized that these consistency and if you sum up my career, these three things had been very phenomenal in what had brought me this far and what people will call the successes. So when it came to mentoring, which is about teaching people, so I'm somebody who would like to learn something, not because I need it now, because I think that all right, somebody will need it in the future and I will be the best person placed to teach them. And I took pride in that. I still take pride in that. And it had helped me in my career to also be a lead. So I realized that usually when people are looking for leaders, especially for novel initiatives, I will be the person to be called, like help somebody to say, Joy can do this work very well because she'll figure it out. And I'll try to figure it out. And then when it came to women and cheerleading, so if you look at all the things that I do now and the support that I get for women in PR, is because I am like one of the biggest cheerleaders of women. And I love to be amongst women who are just going somewhere. I said they know where they're going, so that I can, because we are chameleons, right? I can take on the
Yes.
skin of those people around me. Then when it came to reading, because of my reading, like I haven't studied agribusiness or agri-leisure, but I have read a lot on that subject area. And today it is a business that I am in. So these three areas will be, for me, a typical example of taking consistent action and it leading you at the end of the day to where you want to be.
And I completely agree with that, because sometimes you don't even know where you're going in its
True.
entirety.
Yeah.
Someone said something recently, and I agree that if you had a complete picture of what was in front of what was ahead of you, you'd probably just freeze, or you'd say, this is not for me. No, I can't do that. But when you don't even know, and then you just take these consistent small steps towards it, you just see that it all sums up in the end, and then you have something solid. So thank you again for sharing that. Take us to that big presentation moment where the slides failed, where your improvised jokes didn't make sense. How did you feel in that moment?
All right, so here we are. So I used to work for Voltic, and Voltic belonged to the Coca-Cola group. So we're a Coca-Cola brand, and the head office was in South Africa. So I was part of the leadership team. We had to do this presentation on, we have this fantastic business that was making a lot of money, and there was a need to like project. And Voltic was like an outlier in terms of the Coca-Cola businesses that had been bought, Coca-Cola Beverages Africa. So here we are to do the presentation. We have, mind you, we have been rehearsing this for more than a month. And we know how to transition from where to where. All right, then we got on stage. So first of all, I will say it was my biggest presentation yet. I have been doing presentation even to the government, to stakeholders in Ghana, but it was my biggest presentation yet. And then the slides, I think at a point the slides froze. So you know when the slides froze and I was trying now to move, it decided to move faster. Right? I don't know if that had happened to you before.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was a big crowd, I decided to put in a joke. And I think that the joke went overboard. I joked too much. So now, so I told a joke, and then now how to come back to the slide, because it was my first big thing. The transitioning was just not right. So usually we spend a week there, and that was the second day. I just wanted the
crowd to open up.
And I became moody. I have always been that girl with a lot of energy, cracking jokes here and there. I just like everything I don't know what just happened. Everything just went dead. And I got some feedback. Of course, a lot of people laughed. So I think that, first of all, I was a little bit hard on myself. That's one. The team, some members also were a little bit hard, but some members also thought, okay, like this is cool. In fact, you handled it very well. And some people in the audience also said, wow, like that was a good thing. Like the joke was very so appropriate. But I just felt, because it wasn't planned, it wasn't part of the plan, I just felt it was just out of it. Yeah. And for a very, very long time, I wasn't myself. Even after we had returned to Ghana, I wasn't myself. But let me tell you what. So this is what happened. I decided now to start to go. So I went on YouTube to read. So I went on YouTube to read watch and read about presentations that had gone my way, right? and what the people had done after that. Then I read also and watched videos about what do you do when something happens to your slide in the middle of a presentation. And I learned a lot from there. It helped me. The next time I had to do a presentation, everybody was like, wow. I prepared, over prepared. And in fact, I prepared for the lapses. That if something like that happened, what was I going to do? And today, like I do say, I'll even go ahead to now be an official or corporate MC who do presentations and trainings and have been told that I'm good at it. Also because I failed, and I failed on a very big stage. And when you fail on a very big stage very early, for people who later learn from it, what happens is that you never want it to happen again. So I
Sure.
didn't want it to happen again. So it was a big failure, but I think that it was to my benefit. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. So I also like that you mentioned that you had to go and learn what to do, better to do if it happens again, so that even if it happened, you were prepared for it. So let me ask you, what two tips can you share on this call for anybody that maybe finds themselves in a situation where the slides fail?
All right, I like that. So when your slides fail, first of all, when you're going for a presentation, there's a need to over prepare. Over prepare in such a way that when the slides are no more there, you can almost tell which slide comes after which slide. So when the slide fails, you no more rely on the slide. So you see what TED Talks do. Sometimes they either hold a card in their hands, and that's something I have learned. So one, hold cards in your hand that reflects the presentation. And anytime you've done presentation one, put a card either behind or somewhere, and continue to hold the present slide, the card of the present slide. So if anything happens to that slide, you know what to say. And I also learned about the 3 phrases. Phrase your key messages in 3 ways, or let's say you phrase them with either 3 words, or in 3 sentences, or 3 messages that you want to give. So when your slide fail, go ahead, give that message and move to the next one. Don't try to make, so the thing is that when you're not prepared, you don't know what to do. And usually for those of us who don't know what to do, humor comes in. You want to use humor. And because you are not prepared for that humor, you over deliver that humor, which sometimes doesn't sit with the whole presentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have your cue cards and you have your message, go ahead, give your message and move on to the next one. If along the way your slide comes, that's good. So number 1 tip, prepare over prepare, and know your slides very well. Know which slide comes after the other. The second one is that you should have cue cards. So have cue cards, and on the cue cards, ensure that you keep only 3 messages that you want to give from that slide. Not more than that, so that it's easier for you and it's also easier on the audience, especially when your presentation decides to fail you.
Thank you for sharing those very profound tips. So if your presentation decides to go the way that isn't supposed to go, just remember these tips that Joy has shared. Okay. So one more thing on embarrassing situations. Let's talk about how you were embarrassed at a conference, and then you have now gone from there to hosting the Women in PR Summit. Tell us that story first of all, and then also take us through the transformation that came with that, such that you were able to make that shift.
Comes of Africa, the Pan-African voice of communication, media, and content, connecting today's professionals and tomorrow's leaders across the continent.
Okay, you can break it down a little bit for me so that I can wrap my head around that question.
So first of all, spill the tea. Tell us about that time that you were embarrassed at a conference.
Why are you like this? Why
Well,
are you like this? Okay.
so sorry. So let
Yeah.
me just let me share why I'm saying that. Embarrassments are normal,
Here they are.
unfortunately, but
I like that, unfortunately.
yeah, it's unfortunate because I mean, when the embarrassment happens, you just want the mouth to open up and swallow you. However, embarrassments are normal, and then like you mentioned with the slides that went wrong, you were stuck in it for a while. And I mean, I can imagine that every time you walked, it just felt like someone was looking at you and then talking about the fact that, oh, she was the one that had the slides that messed up. And
Yes.
yes, and then it must have taken you some time to shake it off and just say, you know what, it's what it is. So I also want the person that's listening to know that embarrassment does not come in just one form. It doesn't come only once in a lifetime. For what it is worth, you will have quite a couple of it. So get with the program. It happens. So anyway, I want to hear the gist first of all before we now talk about the other side of it.
All right, so let me tell you this one. In the hit of 2020, no, not 2020, I think 2019. So 2018 to 2019, we had as a business or in Ghana, we had a lot of issues with plastics and also the beverage industry. So the government was looking at how can they get us in line to be managing plastics, and we are also looking at, no, we would not want to pay any extra tax. So we're engaging a lot with the government. In fact, we're engaging with multiple government agencies because there's taxation. So the Ministry of Finance was inclusive. There was environment, which was the main issue. So the Ministry of Environment was keen, and then also the issue of labor. All right. So all these three industries and other industries. So we used to have a meeting. So it has to be an intra-industry meeting. So the industry of beverage manufacturers will always hold a meeting with the government. So we've been battling, and we will go up and down, reading lots of documents. And I'll tell you, those also were the years that my ability to read, came into play, because I was reading documents that I had never seen before, and at a first glance, don't even know what they mean. And then it prepared me. So here is we trying to get a meeting with the government of Ghana, the finance ministry. And we all know that one of the top ministries in every country is a finance ministry. And then finally, we got a meeting. So all our MDs were there, and our corporate communications people, PR, were there. And then we were in a room. So everybody had spoken. So from the beginning, we would mention our name, and we'd be meeting the minister. Then he said other questions. Okay. Then the minister looks straight into my eyes and mentions my name. Like that's even mentions my name and says, "Do you have anything you want to add or you want to say?" And really, this had been worrying me. Like what I'm about to tell you has been worrying me. So I'm like, Jesus, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Why do I feel like I know where this is going? I'm sorry. Okay, let's go.
I said, Jesus, thank you for this opportunity. So here am I with my youthful exuberance. And if you think that I'm very energetic, I think that I am growing. I sort of feel like my energy is so this is like a moderated energy. So you can see me. And I asked the question, and it was the fact that, like, I do not get it. Why does government think that it's taxation that will solve this problem, when we have come with several papers to show that this is the way? And the 29, 30-year-old me cannot understand why we've given you where else you can find the money, what you can do. And the answer the man gave me he just rubbished me. I'm telling you, it wasn't, and this is my MD, our company MDs. And let me tell you, it wasn't just that. It was because I was leading those conversations to get the meetings, to get papers. I'll put them together. So it's like, like when you have energy and you have youthful exuberance, you have that intelligence backing you. There's this feeling you get.
You feel like the smartest person in the room. You feel invincible.
Thank you. Yes. The whole meeting room became quiet.
Oh my goodness.
First of all, the question I asked, everybody was like, my God, why is she asking this question? Like the quiet was like, why is she asking this question? Why this question is going to embarrass the minister? So that is where I will learn diplomacy. And if Gabriel is going to see this, Gabriel Opoko Asari, thank you very much. Because he called me aside. I think he saw the whole thing. He called me aside and said, so there's something called diplomacy. Your question is very, very on point. But these type of questions, you don't ask them in a room full of people. And because he's a minister, he was embarrassed. And so he answered you that way. It doesn't mean that he didn't get what you said. I was so embarrassed, and I will learn diplomacy. I am that person who is so frank. I will tell you how things are, and I'll realize that when you're dealing with the government, you have to be diplomatic about what you say. It is not just in writing letters that you have to be diplomatic, but even when given the opportunity to ask questions, you have to be diplomatic about how you go about it in the midst of others. That was another embarrassing moment. In fact, for almost 3 months, I couldn't get myself back together. I had to get a mentor and I'm like, I've realized you've gone through such an embarrassing situation. What did you do? And he spoke to me and he says, I'm not even sure the minister is still thinking about it. Get it off you. And it happens. And that's how you learn. Before I would, have other mechanisms to make me, calm down. But I still remember it. Like I remember it.
No, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah, it almost always never leaves your head, but what's important is the learning that you can take from it. And now for someone that's like you and has the entire energy, and when you're in your 20s, you feel like that's where the world ends. And then you get in your 30s and then your mid 30s and you're like, okay,
yeah.
But I'm in my mid 30s right now, and then I hear that when you get to as you grow older, the energy changes again, and then at some point again you have seen enough, you have enough information, and then you can be confrontational without caring whose axe was God. But before you get to that point, you're in your 20s, you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of zest, you probably have answers, you think that you are the most passionate about life,
a particular subject. Yes.
And it happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
How do you stay on top of situations so that you can actually take out learnings from them instead of just make a mess of the situation? You've mentioned diplomacy. Assume that it was not even a situation where you could have brought in diplomacy, because sometimes you just think that, I have to say the truth. It's my truth. I have to say my truth. How can you navigate saying your truth with just avoiding embarrassing the other person and embarrassing yourself?
Okay. I think that, and there's something you said which is really true. I think you can't go about without not embarrassing yourself. And I believe it comes, which is how come the most successful people are also the people who had failed the most, because you continue to do it, and then you learn. So it looks as if you will not be able to not embarrass yourself or get into a situation where you do not like what was happening around you, right? Yeah. You would surely, no matter how well prepared you are, it will surely come, and that's how you learn. But one is that if based on what I know, although it will come, but maybe you can minimize the number of the embarrassing situations you would have. Is that one, you would have to be humble. So, and for me, even up till now, one of the things I pray about is to be humble. When you have pride, you easily get carried away by what you have or what you think you know, right? When you are humble, humility tells you that although you know and you are good, you are not better than the next person beside you, and you don't know all. There's more you will continue to know, which is how come when you're getting into your mid 30s, like I'm 38 now, you actually become wiser because you realize that even though in my 30s or my 20s I thought I knew, there's still things I'm discovering, right? So it makes you humble. So humility helps, yeah. And also, I believe the ability to listen and read the room is something I have become better at. That the ability to listen and read the room, and it comes a lot also from reflections, that you need to reflect, you need to listen more and read the room. Could I have left um that room without necessarily asking the question, even though the minister asked me? Yes. Or I could have just summarized what have been said and said I've learned one or two things from it if I were really, really listening, you know, and I was reading the room. I guess that I didn't quite read the room. If I'd read the room, I could have been, or my question would have been better. I would have realized the tonation of even the adults and the big men in the room, how they were asking the questions, and I would have learned that same language of asking the questions. So one is to be humble. The next one is to listen more and read the room and do a lot of reflections. For me, is that you need to reflect, and reflections help you to know what did you do the last time that people looked away. What will you do today that will be better? And I will not sit here and say that I didn't see that coming. Even before we got there, I've always had people say, like, yeah, sometimes just tone down how you ask questions or how you respond to. I've heard it, and I don't think I took any note of that or really took it in as a good feedback to work on until that embarrassing situation happened. So if you reflect more, you will realize what a lot of people say about you, and you will see how you can manage it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Um, we will go to our reflection session now. And Lubabatu will take the reflections. Lubabatu, you have the mic.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Great.
Thank you for sharing all you've been sharing. I've really been picking out so many points and learning and just soaking it all up. I would also apologize for my poor.
It's okay.
Yes. So I mean, reflecting on what you've said, I just penned down a few things just listening to you, and I wrote here that I liked how you learned from a flopped presentation and how you went back and you came back stronger. You went and you did your homework. So every like disappointment or a failed project is not the end of the road. It's an opportunity to go back, reflect, learn, study like you did. You went on YouTube, you got the resources to learn, to know what to do better. And now you can even share 3 steps to succeed when these things happen. And it was really like, I really appreciate hearing that from you, so that it's not like when you fail, you then just go back and mope around. You go back and you learn from it. So like, it's like failures are like, they're like guideways for you to get better at what you do. And you also spoke, I said I like when you said when you're afraid, you go ahead and still do it,
Mhm.
because it's only in that moment where you are afraid that you learn.
Yeah.
He said failure prepares you for excellence, because you will learn, like you keep doing it to
Yeah.
improve.
Yeah.
There's no way that you're going to get better except you do it.
Yeah.
And failure will, if you rely on those failures, like it would just not help you. And I really like that, because just recently, I'm part of the PR Fisher's team, and
Okay.
yes, and so
Congratulations.
I was, I, I recently, just a few days ago, we had a training, right? And it felt like I was thrown into the den of a
The
lion.
deep in.
But yes, and just say, go ahead and do this training. And I'm like, oh my God, take a part of this session. I wasn't like, so the fear in me, I was like, oh my goodness, if I flop right now, it's going to look bad on everybody, right?
Mhm.
So I just like the fact that you mentioned that, and it reminded me of that experience where it's only when you tackle fear head on
Yeah.
that you would, so thank you for sharing that.
You're
And
welcome.
even Blessing, she mentioned about consistency. I just said, oh, I picked that and I wrote it down, and I said, make consistent steps, and it's really, really good. I like the 2 steps. You mentioned 3 steps, but I wrote down 2, which I want to hold on to. You said actions, which is read and all that. You also talked about cheerleading women. I'm a woman. I work in an organization that we're all women.
That's
And
great.
yes,
You're living my dream. I've
yes,
always had that dream that I'm going to work in an organization where it's all women.
all women. Yes,
Yeah.
we're all women.
Yeah.
We're all
Great.
women. And to hear you talk about cheerleading women, I really appreciate you sharing that. And you said also to over prepare for presentations. I was like, okay, okay. And you said always have a backup plan. And now when you said that, I feel like for me it transcends beyond just in my career. Always have a backup plan means have a backup plan in life, right? I mean, you can never over prepare for even different aspects of your life. And so when you mentioned that, I started to reflect about even outside of career, outside of just the corporate life. Make sure that you over prepare, just and have some backup plan, have your sticky notes, the cue cards. uh, Apply that to even other parts of my life. And yes, that's really refreshing to hear. And I have that in my journal, and I'll apply this to my career. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. So the 3 actions she asked me. So I said one was reading, cheerleading
Mhm.
women, and then the last one was being curious.
Aha, being curious.
Which came with a signpost I was talking about. Yeah, so thank you so much, Lubaba. I'm glad that it resonated with you, and I am so big on goal setting and on journaling. And lately, what I've tried to do is to go back to my old journals and my old diaries, because it started as diaries and my old journals, and I cannot believe that most of the things I were passionate about and writing about, I'm leaving them now. Yeah, like some of them it sounds and looks almost like, oh my God, I've written this down and I've forgotten that I even did. And going back now, I see that I'm leaving some of those things I had written back then. And that is why I love the question about what actions have you taken. And your question, a blessing, when you send that to me as to like what are the things we do. When I shared about the things that we do that consistently, we do them consistently. They're like little drops of water, and at the end of the day, they become the life that we are living. It was when I reading my diary and my old journals, I realized that those little actions I took today, they have culminated into the life I'm living now. And you're right, if it had been shown to me at that time, the picture would have looked too big for me. but the little steps had led me here, and I'm grateful for it. So now I always tell myself I have to be then intentional about all the actions, like even this conversation we are having, that I'm intentional about it. And because I never know where this particular conversation could be the door opener for me for a new gig that I want, or a new position that has become open, or maybe a mentorship opportunity somewhere. And this video could be it. You get it? So it's the little actions that we take. So thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you for the reflections. I love that. Lubaba.
Awesome. We have had a powerful and refreshing conversation with Joyce Sackitey. From learning that fear doesn't have to paralyze us, to seeing how even our most embarrassing moments, just like a failed slide presentation or even asking a government official the wrong question, wrong in quotes here, can actually shape our resilience and growth. Joyce has reminded us that consistent, intentional actions truly build the bigger picture of our lives. Her reflections on humility, listening deeply, and reading the room are not just professional tools, but life lessons. And I love how she challenged us to pause by doing reflections and taking responsibility for the energy that we bring into every space. If you're listening today, I hope that Joy's story has inspired you to take action despite fear, to embrace your stumbles as part of becoming, and to never underestimate the power of humility and reflection. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of To My Younger Self, documented in partnership with the Comms Mentorship Circle and hosted here on the PR Visions podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, to like, and to share this conversation with someone who needs encouragement, and continue the conversation with us online. Until next time, keep reflecting, keep growing, and keep becoming.
To My Younger Self is brought to you by PR Fusions Africa in collaboration with Comms Mentorship Circle.